able to so that you'll be able to just watch the video some other time. Okay, so today's topic is human nutrition. It's not human nutrition, it's actually gaseous exchange in humans. So I guess you understand that the human body is made up of different systems. The human body is made up of different systems, and we've covered a few of those systems. All right. So examples of systems in the human body. Let me maximize this. Examples of systems in the human body include the circulatory system. Well, I can't write anything here. But if we do this, I'll be able to write. So the circulatory system is one of the systems in the body. And we also have the digestive system. And for today, we want to look at the what? Respiratory system. All right. So we just need to look at the main components of the circulatory system. What were we discussing in the circulatory system topic? You there, Melissa?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what were we discussing when we were doing the circulatory system?
The heart, the vein, and the artery.
Perfect. The heart and the blood vessels. So the main organ in the circulatory system is the heart. And then the main organ in the digestive system is the stomach, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And then here now today, we're going to be looking at the lungs. That's the main organ. All right. So now I will be explaining through these notes, and then I'll send you the handout so that you can revise. Okay. All right. So now we have features of gaseous exchange surfaces. You're going to discover that our gaseous exchange in humans will take place in the lungs in what we call the air sacs. Right? So we have numerous air sacs inside our lungs. And these air sacs have a dense network of blood vessels. So there's like a blood vessel. And then this is where our gaseous exchange takes place. Right. So the first thing that you're going to discover is that we have many air sacs so that we can have more gaseous exchange taking place. All right. And then the air sacs are very thin. Their outer layer is very thin so that we what? Gases can easily move into the bloodstream and out of the bloodstream, right? So here on this page, we're simply trying to list the adaptations of the air sacs. Adaptations adaptations of the lungs for gaseous exchange. Okay, so I'm going to read through the notes a little bit and then I'll expand. So the surfaces where gaseous exchange occurs in an organism are very different, and different organisms have evolved different mechanisms for getting gases to get gaseous exchange surface depending on size and where they live. All gas exchange surfaces have these features in common. So these are the features that we're interested in. The gaseous exchange surface has a large surface area. In our case, we're looking at the human respiratory system. We have many air sacs in the lungs, isn't it, to improve the surface area. That's a large surface area. The second point we have is we have thin walls. In the context of humans, we'll be using the air sacs. All our air sacs have very thin walls so that gases can easily move from the air sac to the blood and vice versa. So they have to be thin for easy movement or easy diffusion of gases, right? And then the third point, good ventilation with air so that diffusion gradients can be maintained. So you find that in our lungs, we have tiny tubes that are constantly taking away air from the lungs. So this is a form of good ventilation. Everything will just make sense when we look at the structure of the lungs and all related organs. Okay. And then the last point here we have is good supply, good blood supply. So when we're talking about humans, we have good blood supply in our air sacs so that gases can easily move from the air sacs or the lungs to the bloodstream. So now let's take a look at this diagram. Let's zoom it in. So this is what is really taking place when we have gaseous exchange. We have what we call the alveolus or an air sac. Right? So the alveolus is where gaseous exchange takes place in a human being. And as you can see, right around the alveolus, we have those blood vessels, usually capillaries there, right? And the capillaries will be containing blood flowing in that direction. I can track my pointer. So we have blood flowing in that direction. Blood will be going to the lungs so that we get oxygen. So which means that we have to take deoxygenated blood to the lungs so that we get oxygen from the lungs and then we distribute it to the rest of the body. So you can see these red blood cells colored blue. They mean that, okay, we don't have oxygen in these red blood cells. We just have hemoglobin, but we don't have the oxygen. Now, when we get to the air sac, gaseous exchange is going to take place and oxygen will move into these blue guys, isn't it? So that they become red. And carbon dioxide will move out of the blue guys to make room for oxygen. So when you breathe in, you are trying to absorb oxygen, or you're trying to get oxygen into your bloodstream, and at the same time, you are taking away carbon dioxide. So this is what we call gaseous exchange. This process, illustrated by the diagram, is gaseous exchange. Okay, so what you must understand is the heart and the lungs work hand in hand. Can't find my pen. The heart and the lungs work hand in hand. The heart will pump the blood to the lungs, and then the lungs will fill that blood with oxygen and then return that blood to the heart. It is important for you to know that this vein that is coming from the heart to the lungs is what we call the pulmonary artery. It contains deoxygenated blood. So deoxygenated blood. All right. And then, as we are moving from the lungs back to the heart, we have the pulmonary vein, and the pulmonary vein contains oxygenated blood. All right, so that's fine. Let's move on to the more interesting part of this topic, which is actually going to make everything make sense. Let's look at this guy. I'm gonna call this guy Tom. All right. So Tom is a human being, and a human being has many different systems. But at this particular time, we're going to look at Tom's respiratory system. So you must be able to label the different parts of the respiratory system because sometimes you'll be asked to do that in an exam. So the respiratory system starts at the nasal cavity here. It starts here on the nose and in the mouth. I'm sure we're all aware that when you're breathing in, you either breathe in and out through the mouth or through the nose, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So our respiratory system starts at the what? Nasal cavity. This is the starting point. And then when you breathe in or inhale, breathing in is also called inhaling. So when you breathe in, air is going to move through the nasal cavity, and then it's gonna go down through the trachea, right? So from the nasal cavity, we have this guy called the trachea. And then from the trachea, we have this guy that form a Y-shaped or a T-shaped. Let's have this guy. These guys. We call that the bronchus, right? And then after the bronchus, we have what we call the bronchial. I don't think here these guys label that one. So we are saying trachea, and then bronchi. That's just one. These two guys, I can't find my pen. And then from the bronchi, we have our lung there. But the bronchi is gonna get subdivided to what we call bronchioles. So from the bronchi, we have bronchioles. And then from there now, right at the end, we have our air sac, where gaseous exchange take place. Air sac or alveoli or alveolus, isn't it? So you must be able to label this. You don't need to worry about the ribs. You don't need to worry about the intercostal muscles. This just help you when you're breathing in and breathing out. You don't need to worry about these fluids. You just need to worry about these parts that I've labeled on the right. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So here they label the bronchial, and then after the bronchial, we have the air sac or the alveoli. So make sure you practice labeling this and everything will be okay. Right. We have a table showing the different functions of the organs associated with the respiratory system. The first part is the ribs. Why do you think we need ribs, Melissa?
To protect their heart and lungs.
Excellent work. So the ribs are there for protection, especially the delicate organs in the body, the heart and the lungs, right? So that's fine. It's for protection purposes. And then we have those intercostal muscles. Those intercostal muscles are used when you are inhaling or exhaling. So that's their purpose. And then after that, we have the diaphragm. Let me show you the diaphragm here. This guy, right below the ribs or the rib cage, we have our diaphragm. The diaphragm is a sheet of connective tissue and muscle at the bottom of the thorax that helps change the volume of the thorax to allow inhalation and exhalation. So the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles work hand in hand to facilitate breathing. That's inhaling and exhaling. So you find that when you breathe in, your diaphragm will move in a certain direction, and then when you breathe out, it will relax and move down. You can try breathing in. You notice that your diaphragm is going to try and move a little bit up. And when you relax, it's going to move down. Okay, and then we move on to the trachea. It is also called a windpipe, and it connects the mouth and the nose to the lungs. And then after that, we have the larynx, also known as the voice box. When air passes across here, we'll be able to make sounds. So we don't really need to worry much about this, but it's just good to know. And then we have the bronchi, large tubes branching off the trachea with one bronchus for what? For each lung. And then after the bronchus, we have the bronchioles. They're just tiny tubes, isn't it? Okay, the bronchi split to form smaller tubes called bronchioles in the lungs connected to the alveoli. And then the alveoli, we have, these are tiny air sacs where gaseous exchange takes place. So you must be able to know the functions of each of these parts. All right, I'm gonna give you the notes and I'm gonna give you some questions based on this, and it will just take practice for you to master these concepts. Okay, so here it is important for you to know the experiments associated with what? Respiration. Respiration involves breathing, right? So can you tell me this? When you're breathing in, what kind of gas are you breathing in, Melissa?
Oxygen.
Right. That's not quite true, but it can be true for stage 7 kind of gas. So humans breathe in oxygen.
This carbon dioxide.
All right, still that's fine. Okay, when you're breathing in, are you able to distinguish the oxygen atoms from the air or the oxygen molecules? You can't, because there's no filter in your nose to say, okay, I just want oxygen molecules, everything else come out. That is why if you're breathing air in a place where they're having a braai, right? You're gonna end up breathing in the smoke, and then you tend to run away from that place as much as you can, because the smoke is going to choke you or something like that. So your body can distinguish between oxygen that you need and all the other gases in air. So when you breathe in, you are going to breathe in everything that is in the air, right? And then, just because of the concentration of oxygen in the air and the presence of hemoglobin in your blood, in your red blood cells, you'll be able to take only the oxygen. You won't take nitrogen, even if we have about 70% of nitrogen in the air. You will not be able, your body won't be able to absorb it unless if it has no option. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
All right. So there's what they call nitrogen poisoning. If we take you to a room, this is Melissa. Melissa is in a room filled with only nitrogen. You're going to breathe in normally, but your breathing will be in vain because you won't be getting oxygen, the oxygen you need for your body to function. So you end up absorbing nitrogen and you may end up dying because of this nitrogen poisoning. And the same can be applied to carbon dioxide. If we put you in an environment where there is a lot of carbon dioxide, very little oxygen, your body will end up absorbing that carbon dioxide and you end up dying from it. Right? So your body can distinguish between the different gases. So you would basically take in everything. But the fact that you have hemoglobin in the blood, hemoglobin will only react with oxygen, and that is how you absorb it. And everything else will be exhaled. All right. So now let's look at this experiment. Lime water. Lime water is used to test for carbon dioxide. And it is one of the most important tests that you must know. You must know the different tests in biology or science. One of them is the gases test. Gases tests. So you should know that we have our major gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, right? And maybe hydrogen. You must know this test. So for oxygen, you use a glowing splint. I'm sure you know that. And oxygen will reignite a glowing splint. And then for carbon dioxide, you use lime water. And lime water is going to turn milky white when it is subjected to carbon dioxide. If it doesn't turn milky white, then there is no carbon dioxide that side. And then if you want to test for hydrogen, hydrogen will produce a pop sound with a burning splint. So make sure you try to memorize these tests for gases, but I'm going to send you a handout with all the major tests needed in your syllabus. So here what is going to happen is when when a person inhales the air here, air will move in one direction. So because this part or this tube is submerged, air will not be able to move from the right-hand side, but air will move from the left. So when the person inhales, air is going to move in that direction. It will go into this first lime water, and then after that, boom, to your mouth. And then when you exhale, air is going to move in that direction. Some of the air will go this way, but just because we have lime water, which is denser than air, we won't be able to push the air down the lime water on the left-hand side. But air will prefer to move to the less resistance path, which is the right-hand side. So air is going to move. This is exhaled air. And that's inhaled air. Right. So our exhaled air will move right to the lime water, and we're going to see some bubbles there as air will be trying to escape like that. So after some time, you're going to notice that the lime water on the right-hand side will turn milky white. This is evidence that we are actually exhaling what? Carbon dioxide. That humans, whenever they exhale, they produce carbon dioxide. In actual fact, they produce all the gases, but the concentration of carbon dioxide will be more. Are we together, Melissa?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. So you must just know these facts, and you must understand this experiment. Now, let's look at this table, which shows the differences between inspired and expired air. Inspired is like air taken in. You can put inhaled here. Expired is like exhaled, isn't it? All right.
Yes, sir.
Oh, perfect. So the composition of air table. Inspired air, this is the air that is in the atmosphere. Oxygen is about 21%, carbon dioxide is 0.04%, nitrogen is 78%. So when you breathe in, you're going to take all those gases in. And then when you breathe out, most of the oxygen or some of the oxygen will be attracted and bonded. It will react with hemoglobin in the red blood cells. And then when you exhale, you're still going to exhale oxygen, but the percentage is slightly lower. So what happened to this 5%? It has been absorbed by your blood, isn't it? And when you exhale, your carbon dioxide percentage is going to increase. Why? Because of a reaction now. You will be having this case. Let me draw the IGCSE. So carbon dioxide will be more concentrated in your blood vessels here, in your capillaries. So all gases are capable of diffusion. So carbon dioxide, because it will be having a high concentration in the blood vessels, it's going to diffuse into your lungs. And then oxygen, because it has high concentration in your lungs, is going to try and diffuse in your what? To your blood vessels. So that is how gaseous exchange takes place. And hemoglobin will just make it worse. It will actually react with the oxygen. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions regarding this, but the points are pretty straightforward.
I don't have a question, sir.
All right. So nitrogen will not react with anything in your body under normal circumstances. So it will just be exhaled as is. You take in 78%, you just exhale it as it is. All right. So now let's look at this. I'm going to read through this, investigating the effects of physical activity on breathing. So right now, you're most probably seated and you're breathing normally. What happens if you start exercising? How is your breathing? You start what?
You breathe more and faster.
Perfect. You're going to breathe more heavily, and the rate of gaseous exchange will be more, isn't it? So I'm going to read the points here. Exercise increases the frequency and depth of breathing. So you start making sounds as you are breathing, right? Because you'll be trying to get as much air as possible. All right. This can be investigated by continuing the breaths after taking 1 minute at rest and then measuring the average chest expansion over 5 beats. So you can do this experiment, but yeah, it's not really necessary. What you just need to know is that exercise will increase the frequency of breathing and the depth of breathing because there will be a demand for oxygen in your body. And this is due to the fact that you have a lot of respiration, more respiration taking place in the cells. Okay. All right. So now let's look at this. Identifying intercostal muscles. So this is the extended part. For those who are doing extended sciences, extended bio, okay. Muscles are only able to pull on bones and not to push on them. This means that there must be 2 sets of intercostal muscles, one to pull the rib cage up and another set to pull it down, right? My teacher used to say that we have biceps and triceps, isn't it? Biceps and triceps on your arm, right? These muscles act in opposite ways. When the biceps contract, the triceps relax. When the biceps relaxes, the triceps contract. They call that an antagonistic action, which means opposite action. So the same applies to our respiratory system. We have those intercostal muscles, and they are responsible for moving the rib cage, and they are also responsible for increasing the volume of the lungs so that air can easily move in and then reducing it so that air will move out. So one set of intercostal muscles is found on the outside of the rib cage. These are external intercostal muscles. I'm sure you can see them on the diagram here. And then another set is found on the inside. These are internal intercostal muscles. Okay. All right, so those are internal and these guys are external, the ones on the outside. All right. So you just need to understand that, okay, these guys are always acting in opposites so that we achieve the desired function. All right. The function of cartilage in the trachea extended. Okay. Right. Let's look at this. The body is made up of different parts, just as the respiratory system, even the respiratory system. Let's try to analyze everything from the nose right until the end. I'm gonna need to use this diagram again. Okay, so the main entry point is what? That's the nose, right? So we leave the mouth to the digestive system and we start at the nose. Have you noticed that the nose is known for producing mucus? Why do you think we have mucus? And in the nose, we also have some hairs. Why do you think we have some hairs?
I think it's because it's to prevent.
Yes, that's perfect. We're left with about 1 minute. So in the nose, we have those hairs to try and trap dust. So you never want to shave the hairs in the nose. And then the nose is capable of producing mucus to trap dust, and also the dust will be containing bacteria. So that's the first part. And in our trachea now, the trachea is made up of cartilage. These are bony-like substances. So this can be the structure of your trachea together, and then that is the air passage. So the cartilage is to ensure that the trachea is always open, right? So that air can easily move freely when you're inhaling and when you're exhaling. And again, the trachea is made up of a lining of mucus secreting membranes of cells. We need mucus so that we can trap any dust and bacteria, isn't it? Let me just go back in less than a minute. So the rings of cartilage surround the trachea and the bronchi. The function of the cartilage is always to support the airways and keep them open during breathing. If not present, the